Well, good day, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of WEDCOnomics. I'm Jack Terrill. I'm the Executive Director of Wentworth Economic Development Corporation, and we are in the business to help small business through advising, finance, and promotion. And we do this little it's global, but I mean, it's a podcast. And we do that sort of to raise awareness of how important our small business economy is here in the Eastern Lakes region. And I've had some fascinating guests on, and today is no exception, folks.
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
I want you to say, I bet you recognize her face. I want you to say hello to Jen Crompton.
Hi, Jack. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, this is so much fun.
You're a good sport.
Well, you know.
How's it feel to be back in the saddle again?
A little weird.
Yeah.
A little weird. Don't know where to look. You know, all these things I used to have to know. A little confusing, but no, it's great. It's great because what I did was wanting to connect with people and talk about stuff. So that's what this is.
Yeah, and so by way of introduction, if you don't know, Jen spent many, many years with WMUR TV in Manchester, and has recently, within the last year, retired.
Yep, I did.
And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Had a very, very successful career, and you would call yourself a broadcast journalist?
Right.
Is that
Yep.
proper?
That is, yep. When I go to the doctor's office and they say at the time that I was working, what do you do? I'd say a broadcast journalist.
Okay. Well, great. Hey, can you just explain maybe what a broadcast journalist is, or what that line of work is?
Yeah. Well, you know, the base word in there is journalism, and journalism is journaling, writing down and sharing observations, pulling in thoughts and opinions and different sides to things, and broadcast is just literally the technical piece of sharing that. And broadcast journalism became a term because we, for a long time, had print journalism, and then the murmurings of any kind of technology came about. So for many years, broadcast journalism covered everything from radio to TV, and now, of course, it covers pretty much any kind of communication is now broadcast journalism. And I don't mean that, I mean that kind of facetiously. It's not journalism necessarily, but broadcasting is now.
So it's not, we might think it's television, but it's much more than that. It can be radio.
Oh, yeah.
It can be written.
Oh, yeah, journalism is...
So it's how you broadcast it. It could be multiple ways of broadcasting your journal.
Yes. You could be, you podcasters in some ways, if you want to be broad in terms of the scope of the title. Broadcast journalism is kind of sharing, learning, sharing. I think initially built into the word journalism was some responsibility to make sure things are accurate and portray without editorializing. I think a lot of that's shifted now, but in its base form, it's sharing information, telling stories, but not making them up, but sharing perspectives and sharing information.
So opinion sharing is also broadcast journalism?
I would say no.
Okay.
In the purest form of the title, but I'm sure there was
because it's not sharing unbiased information.
Correct.
So the sharing of biased information is its own little category.
Well, it's.
I'm asking the pro.
Well, I'm sure it's up for debate, but old school me says journalism was meant to portray the act of watching, observing, culling information and perspectives, pulling them together into a cohesive, succinct story to share with the public that was and is inherently unbiased and as thorough as it can be. Now that's the ideal.
So as you went through your career, and you wore many different hats at WMUR. Can you just give me a list of
Yep.
some of the things that you were responsible for at different times
Sure.
at MUR?
Yeah, real non-traditional track, but I started there by helping fill in for a show producer that was on maternity leave, and then she had complications, so I stayed on freelance there, but producing shows. So being the person who, whatever show you're assigned, in this case I think it was a 5 o'clock show that ran half an hour. You get in the morning and you start assembling what you think is going to be in that show, and of course I worked in news, so that can change in the course of the day, but how much time you're going to give to it, who's going to help write those different pieces, what parts of them will be video, what parts of them will be live, and being kind of the choreographer, if you will.
So, as producer, you were assigning out, hey, I need 500 words on this.
Or in TV, it's time. I need 30 seconds. I need a minute.
Okay.
Or the technology, the technical terms are like VO would be video, VOSOT or VO Byte would be video in one interview chunk, and then packages, which are sort of the full-blown stories that contain multiple interviews but are taped pieces in of themselves. So the producer kind of oversees each individual show. That's their baby. So I started out as a producer. I started doing some part-time reporting. So the reporter would be a person who takes on one or two of a particular story, fleshes it out, works with a videographer to kind of tell it within the confines of whatever that time space is.
Is the producer giving the reporter direction on
Editorial of the
where
content.
to go, or where to go in the interview?
Well,
or?
there's a lot more in the news to a newsroom than meets the eye, because there's a news director, and I'll get into the path a little bit, sort of oversees the news operation, and then underneath the news director there might be an assistant news director or some executive producers that kind of oversee all of the things that are going to be broadcast out. And then depending on the size of the station, the experience of the person in the position, it kind of then filters down. The content, most of the content, much of it comes from, if you have any national component pieces from affiliates, from like CNN or ABC or sister stations that may be owned by the same company. Mm-hmm. They share stuff. But in the course of the day, you have people going out, reporters going out with videographers, sometimes videographers alone, sometimes reporters that are taking information and working with it in-house. But it's different people are assigned to different stories on any specific day, and they all have to come together and fit in the course of that day to the spots they're supposed to be, to the lengths of time they're supposed to be, and to maintain the newest component pieces of them. So something could change in your story. You're kind of responsible for knowing that. Between the executive producers and the reporters are assignment editors. So they are the folks that are sitting there.
You didn't know this was so complicated, did you?
They've got the big eyes out there. They're aware of what's happening nationally, regionally, locally. They have great relationships, supposedly. A lot of them do, but with the heads of things and sources, and so they can kind of pull together.
What are they called again?
That's the assignment manager. That's a critical role in any
I'd never
news
heard
organization.
of that.
Yeah, the assignment
manager. And they're
manager.
the ones that are connected, plugged in, know people?
For the most part, they're the ones that in the olden days would listen to police radios and fire radios and say, oops, we got a fire going on, okay, so-and-so, head over to wherever and let us know what's happening. I hear that this is what's going on, and it sounds like the district coordinator's there, so look for so-and-so. Reporters, though, the longer...
Which is where we're at in your career right now. You're a reporter.
Reporters are their own assignment managers, practically speaking, because they're the ones managing their own time. They know how long I may get in the morning and I'm assigned a story, and the assignment manager might say, hey, not very often, but they might say, we've got you set up with the whatever fire chief at such and such a time in this town, but we need these other angles too. Or it could be breaking news, something happening or whatever. But Yeah, I've done a little bit of all of it.
So
They were long enough.
you've done production,
Right.
you've been a producer, you've
Was a reporter.
done some reporting. What else?
Right. Then I had my ideal job. I was reporting in the Seacoast, and then I had some vocal cord issues. So I got pulled back in-house because you couldn't really, and it's broadcasting, you couldn't really understand what I was saying because my voice was very broken. I happened to be back producing shows when the executive producer took a job in Boston, and they threw me into that space. So I was the executive producer for a number of years while I was producing the 6 o'clock
Executive
news.
producer of news.
Of news. And while I was also producing the 6 o'clock news. So you're running around during the day, kind of helping steer things on the ship, but then at some point you got to narrow down and focus on your one show. Now at WMUR, that's its own job, 6, and then executive producer is a standalone job. But I did that for a while. I lose the order after a while.
Sure, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, right. I was also I was weekend anchor for a while.
Weekend anchor.
A weekend anchor.
Of the 6 o'clock news?
6 and 11 on weekends.
Ooh.
And I did that at a time when I had been, I forget the order, but my voice got better. Okay. So I could be the managing editor and news and anchor on the weekends. And I did that for a number of years. And I was a political reporter, but then something came up, the station that was scurrying, I became news director. I ran the organization. There was a lot of change going on, and they pulled me in and said, look, we need somebody to sit in this ship. And literally that same year, the station was bought by a big company.
Hearst?
Yeah, well, it was called Hearst Argyle Television at the time, which was a publicly held component piece of Hearst, but then they took it inside, and then it was Hearst. So I had some experience working with a big company. And then I backed off of that because it was a lot, and I had young kids. And I worked for Chronicle for 10 years, New Hampshire Chronicle, which was my favorite job of all time there.
With Fritz?
With Fritz Weatherby, yeah. With Fritz. And
is he still doing that?
He is. By God, he's a wonder, you know?
Wow.
He's
got to be in his 80s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, on the latter side of the 80s. And you wouldn't know it by talking to him or seeing him. And he's a real interesting guy. Interesting.
I bet. Who knows more about New Hampshire than Fritz?
Right. And then worked on those pieces for years, and then needed to kind of, life has its necessities, and I needed benefits and that kind of thing. And those jobs in New Hampshire Chronicle weren't deemed full-time, so you didn't get those kinds of benefits. So the job opened back up at the Seacoast Bureau, so I took it. And I liked that job because I live, as the crow flies, about a mile from the Seacoast Bureau.
And that's how you finished your career.
Yeah, 10 years in the Bureau, and then I was done.
And so you said that your favorite of all those positions, mm-hmm. which is just a wealth of experience that you gained over the years, incredible. Your favorite was Chronicle?
Yeah, but for reasons that have very much to do with how the business works. And that is only that Chronicle allowed pieces to be longer, more in-depth, more personal, really creative editing and video, and the deadlines were much looser. The other, it was beat the clock every day, no matter what position you are in the newsroom. Every day is a fresh start, and you're scrambling to the finish line every show. And now WMUR has, they're on the air with news almost all the time, and technology allows for that. It also means people are doing a lot more work. It's a real high. It's really compelling. It's really exciting. It's really challenging, and I was getting too old for that piece of it. So back in the day with New Hampshire Chronicle, you could really flesh out a piece and get to know the people that were in it and the nuances that made it so compelling, and turn around a really cool piece of work. And it just felt really good. It felt great. And I felt that way in news, too. It's just it was really nice not to have those deadlines.
So what I'm sensing here is part of your bliss in this journey, in this career, was the stories that you were exposed to, the people you were exposed to.
Absolutely.
As a bureau broadcaster on the Seacoast and also with the Chronicle.
Right.
The other hats you wore don't seem so connected to the day-to-day, the people on the street.
Right. And that was just a personal choice for me. I was news director. It was so exciting, and so I was so honored to have that job. I did it for 4 years. But just I'm more task-oriented and managing people. For those of you who do that.
God bless you.
Yeah. It was fine. I tried to do it with compassion, and that was part of my problem. It was difficult for me to both manage up and manage down at the same time, to please all people at one time, and that's just something that was a challenge for me. I loved it. I had fantastic experiences. I'm glad I wouldn't ever change the history of things, the trajectory. But it also helped inform me about what I really kind of needed to do, which was get back to storytelling.
So let's talk about that just a little bit. The storytelling. You had both on the Seacoast and with Chronicle, I would imagine, quite a bit of intersection with some of the small businesses in New Hampshire.
Absolutely, and across the state. Just because it was in the Bureau, much of the time we were anywhere.
Yeah.
But a lot of, and you think about any story, whether it's about economics or people, about hiring, about depression kinds of, everything seemed to tie in local small business. And when you're a reporter, that's awesome, because those are the folks that'll talk to you because they feel so strongly about what they're doing. You know, you think about how often on a local TV station do you hear from the guy that's working at a big box store that's across the country? Never, because those places don't allow people to talk to their employees for the most part. So pretty much everybody you're talking to are people that, and when you are born in, live and work your entire life in one state, they're your neighbors, they're your relatives, they're your friends. You know, Jack, you and I have known each other since college. UNH, yeah. And, that's the best thing about any kind of business that you're doing, whether it's small business like you're talking about or just career working in your state, is connections. It's knowing who to call, figuring out what the needs are, helping fill the needs. And what I really have always admired about the business community in New Hampshire is that, man, what a scrappy bunch. You know, I was working as a reporter through, obviously through the pandemic, and I don't know what I would have done without my awesome, scrappy business community that was willing to talk about the challenges, but never back off. They were willing to try to fight the fight. How frustrating, the level of frustration and unknown for everyone in any piece of that experience. But, how do you keep a business afloat when you can't do your business? I mean, it was just amazing. And the challenges that continue. It's just emerging from the pandemic, immense respect for small business. But always through my career, the connections always felt personal. Because it is. It's the size of our state. You're going to bump into that person at a concert, or their kid's going to play baseball with you against yours or something,
Yeah. Are there any stories or interactions that stick out to you, or you sit outside at night and rethink your career and go, oh my God, I loved when I interviewed so-and-so? Or
Well, I think that one of the blessings of working in a small television station that's in a state that actually has oomph in the world, we laugh every time something happens. Anywhere in the globe, we sit and wait for the New Hampshire connection. And there's always a connection. But the New Hampshire primary, you know.
How big was it for you in that industry that we had the first primary in the country?
It was amazing to me. It was very, initially when I was new to it, I would kind of laugh and say, you know, if you're a reporter, let's say, or even a producer, and you decide, I want to have Bill Clinton on my show. Well, at the time Bill Clinton was running, this is just an example. At the time Bill Clinton was running for president, you got to remember he was a governor then. He was new to the scene. George Bush was president, and he was getting a run for his money for a second term.
George H.W.
Yeah,
Bush.
Dad Bush. And I was working out of the Seacoast Bureau, and I remember I got a phone call from one of the producers, and they said, Governor Clinton, we need him to be live in our 5 o'clock show, but he's out running around in the Seacoast, so he's going to come and do that from your space at the Seacoast Bureau. Now, the Seacoast Bureau is one room. It's one room with a bathroom and a little edit suite. And there was a little raised platform with a couple of chairs on it and stuff. And so, and then there was a couple salespeople in my desk in and around the place. So first the Clinton campaign wanted me to fax them a printout of the shape of the room so they'd know where, and I just faxed a square with a little thing for a bathroom, and then where the desks were and where the things, and they wanted to know where, you know, and this is not on the Clintons. This would be with any, you know, people running for president. You know, I felt a little like a bumpkin at that point because I was really new to that whole process at that point. So in the course of the day, my story was altogether different than I was doing. I couldn't even tell you what my story was, but I needed to get it done, and I needed to be live for it. And in comes the Clinton campaign to wait there for his thing, and there's a little cadre of young people, and Hillary Clinton came in, and I just remember she had on a black headband and she had long hair, and he came up to me and asked me if he could use my phone, and obviously way before cell phones were even on the horizon at that point. He asked if he could use my phone to call his daughter, who had just done a ballet thing, and he wanted to see how it went, and so I said, sure, you know, and in the meantime, I'm getting urged to get my stuff done, and so it's a little bit of pandemonium going on, and then I get a call that the Bushes heard that Bill Clinton was going to be at the Seacoast Bureau, so they wanted George Bush, the elder, to have a presence in the same show, only he was in Washington, so so this is all happening in a space smaller than this. The Clinton folks are there. The chairs are, and I'm working on what I'm working on. And then we get the call that Barbara Bush is going to come and also be interviewed, not at the same time, but in the same space. So we were giggling that we're working in that space about, like, if the world only...
It's the most important space in the country at the time.
So, and I remember I was very pregnant with my daughter, who is, you know, now...
Just engaged,
and I know, and in her early 30s, so we're going back a while. And Barbara Bush. So the difficulty was the Clinton folks said, well, we can't be in the same space. And we didn't have any other space in the building, but the guys that worked in the garage floor on the dock opened up a space for us in an office that hadn't been leased yet. We threw some chairs in there, and I went in and I spoke with Barbara Bush just to be nice so that she'd know what was happening. And I remember her assistant, her publicist, looked at me and said, oh, when are you due? And Barbara Bush grabbed her by the arm and put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, you never ask a woman or assume that a woman is pregnant. And I said, no, it's okay, you know.
Sounds like Babs.
Yeah, but the day went on, and Clinton had his thing, and she had her thing. But just that realization that that's probably not going on everywhere in other states, you know?
It's not.
You know, and
it's not.
It was fascinating. And at the same time, we're still covering the stuff that happens in communities, whether it be, you know, I had to sit through some horrendous trials, but also cover some wonderful things of communities coming together and communities reemerging, you know. A lot of it tied to small business. So much of it tied to the passion for local and community and keeping that alive, which takes, you know.
It takes effort.
Yeah.
Not just on the individual business owner, but the community's got to get behind these efforts.
Yes.
And now, if that person isn't willing to put in the effort, then the community shouldn't either. But if the effort is put forth and the product is something that is of value, of use, well, the community's got to get behind that.
Yeah. It's interesting how much economics play into those situations and how different communities handle it differently, and some battle the economics piece, like not, as a municipality, not wanting or feeling able to help when it's like giving fuel to the engine, you know, like you got it. Helping small business survive is critical to the survival of a community as its own self-sufficient, you know.
I'm seeing that every day here with the tour buses that are just rolling into Wolfeboro.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people wanting to see leaves and color and all that. But, I mean, these buses, they come into town and they just open the door and out pours 30, 40 people from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they can't spend their money fast enough.
Right. I know.
So,
yes, we love tourism in New Hampshire.
Yeah. But that first in the nation primary was a boon, not just to MUR, right? Because your ad rates would skyrocket during a primary time.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I was never on that side of it.
Yeah.
On the business literal side of it.
Yeah.
But I know that as an executive producer or as a news director, one of the things you battle, and that there's at least at WMUR, there was like an iron curtain between news and sales, because that would be sales.
Okay.
Because you can't let what sales is doing impact the job you have to do.
Because always in the background, we have to deliver an unbiased product.
Right. So you know,
just like we're unbiased here at WEDCOnomic.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you know, it's supposed to be two different universes. So there was always a tug of war, actually, when I was a news director, saying, no, I can't, I need these minutes. I need this many minutes inside this half-an-hour broadcast to do a good job. So there was that kind of battle going on between departments. But certainly the popularity was there, and you know, external folks would talk about the monies they were pouring in to small states, Iowa, as well, to get their message out early and first, you know, and but it's not just for the broadcast journalists, it's also for the small businesses that all these people have come into the state and they're staying here for 2 or 3 nights, and they're eating out, and yeah, I would say that's true in certain communities. I don't know. Well, I know this may live on into perpetuity, but you got a big visit up here on Monday, I think.
Well, I heard that.
Of someone running for president. Right. And so what that does to a community generally is somebody who has had a big title in the past and is hoping for it again, they have a huge force that comes into the area to check things out for safety, for,
Right.
you got state police jumping in and everybody else trying to figure out how do we do this safely, how do we manage crowds, what's there to expect. It's a real machine. And so that's one thing New Hampshire had to adapt to, was how to manage
These
those
machines.
big things coming in, and
Yeah.
it takes not just the local community. It's a statewide effort. It's from Department of Safety all the way down to local businesses and stuff.
Well, you certainly were in a fascinating industry, if that's the word, and you've certainly tasted a lot of different pieces of that industry,
Yeah.
which I'm sure has been very valuable to you in life in general as well as in the career. So that's
I'm
pretty
great
cool.
at trivia. New Hampshire trivia.
Wow, that's because you hung around with Fritz.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none is how I see journalism.
Well, would you have any advice for people who may be interested in following your path into broadcast journalism?
Well, first I'd say that I think any of the jobs that I had are changing because of technology. It's much more, everything is technology now. So it's a different job. To be a journalist means you need to embrace the technology as well and have a real solid understanding of how to make things happen, how to pull them off. It also takes but this is the formula for business in general or any career path you take. It takes passion, to just move towards it. And it takes compassion, the ability and the willingness to work with people along the way, to hear them out, to make them feel heard in whatever it is you're doing as you try to figure what you're doing, and to treat everyone like they are your neighbor or your family. From how you decide to do your business to how you treat them when you're working with them, And I just think, I know from my experience that getting to know people as people has been the most fun, interesting, heartwarming piece of at least my career. And that runs from having to call police chiefs who are some are hysterical, to people who are in the worst moments of their lives, something I never wish on anyone having to do it. I used to always just say, if I have to do this, I want to feel like I'm glad it's me doing it and not someone else. Just approaching things with compassion, knowing when to back off, respecting people. I just think however you're making your living, whatever you're doing that you love or like, that compassion and passion are inseparable.
Whether it's a small business,
Right.
or broadcast journalism,
Yep.
great advice. That's me. Wow. That went by quick, folks, huh?
That was a nice clean 30 minutes there, Jack.
Well, I run a tight ship. It's a global podcast. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And Jen, thank you for coming on.
Jack,
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for letting me gab. I appreciate
That was awesome. That was awesome. I'm Jack Terrill, Wentworth Economic Development Corporation. We're here to support small businesses through advising, financing, and promotion. We'll see you next episode. Thank you.
Bye.